Robert Martinez stood in the rain outside the downtown Chicago bus stop, watching the well-dressed man stumble and collapse against the graffiti-covered shelter. It was 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, the kind of night when decent people were home in bed and the streets belonged to those who had nowhere else to go. The man wore a suit that probably cost more than Robert made in 3 months, his Italian leather shoes now soaked and muddy. Nobody else at the bus stop moved to help. A couple of teenagers laughed and took photos with their phones. An elderly woman shook her head and looked away. Robert felt his chest tighten with a familiar pain. Remembering another rainy night 7 years ago when his wife Sarah had needed help and nobody came, he couldn't walk away. He wouldn't. What Robert didn't know was that this drunk man slumped against the bus shelter wasn't just anyone. He was Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industries, worth an estimated $4 billion. And what neither of them could have imagined was that this one moment of kindness would expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of corporate America and change both their lives forever. Hit that subscribe button and smash that like if you want to see how this incredible story unfolds. We know you've been watching our other videos, so subscribe now to get notified when we drop the next one. You won't believe what happens next. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Robert was 42 years old but looked closer to 50. Life had been hard on him. He worked the night shift at a warehouse loading dock, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when they needed extra hands. His daughter Emma, 15 years old and brilliant beyond her years, was his entire world. She'd earned a scholarship to a prestigious prep school, but the scholarship didn't cover everything. There were books, uniforms, lab fees, field trips. Robert picked up extra shifts whenever he could. He ate 1 meal a day, wore the same 3 shirts on rotation, and hadn't bought new shoes in 2 years. His back ached constantly from lifting boxes, his hands were rough and calloused, but he never complained. That wasn't his way. Emma deserved a better life than the one he'd had, and he'd break his body into pieces to give it to her. When he knelt beside the man, the smell of expensive whiskey hit him immediately. But there was something else, something in the man's eyes. When they briefly fluttered open, not just drunkenness, but fear, real bone-deep terror. "Hey buddy, you okay?" Robert's voice was gentle, the same tone he'd used when Emma was small and had nightmares. The man tried to speak, but the words came out slurred and jumbled. He grabbed Robert's jacket with surprising strength. "Not ... safe." They single quotes, Robert looked around. The street was empty except for the people at the bus stop who were deliberately ignoring them. Who's coming? Should I call an ambulance? No, the man's grip tightened. No, hospitals please. They'll find me. Robert had seen enough desperation in his life to recognize it. Whatever this guy was running from, it was real to him. And drunk or not, rich or not, he was clearly in trouble. "Can you walk? Where do you live? Can single quotes go home?" The man's eyes started to close again. Robert made a decision that would change everything. "All right, come on. You can crash at my place until you sober up." Getting the man to his feet was like trying to lift a sack of concrete. He was tall, probably 6'2", and well-built despite the expensive suit. Robert was strong from years of manual labor, but he was only 5'8" and built lean. Somehow they managed. The man's arm draped over Robert's shoulders as they stumbled toward the bus stop. "You're crazy, man," one of the teenagers called out. "He's probably gonna rob you." Robert ignored them. The bus arrived 10 minutes later. The driver, an older black woman named Gloria who'd been driving the night route for 20 years, raised an eyebrow. "Robert Martinez, what have you gotten yourself into now?" "He needs help, Gloria." She sighed but opened the door wider. "Get him on. But if he makes a mess, you're cleaning it up." They rode in silence for 30 minutes, Robert supporting the man who kept drifting in and out of consciousness. A few other passengers got on and off, all of them giving the odd pair a wide berth. Robert didn't care. He'd learned long ago that most people would rather look away than get involved. That was their choice, but it wouldn't be his. His apartment was in a rundown building in the South Side, the kind of place where the elevator never worked and half the hallway lights were burnt out. Robert had lived there for 8 years, ever since Sarah passed. It was all he could afford on his salary, but he kept it clean. That mattered to him, maintaining some dignity even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Getting the man up for flights of stairs was brutal. By the time they reached his door, both of them were breathing hard. Robert's back was screaming in pain, but he didn't stop until he got the man inside and onto his worn couch. The apartment was small, one bedroom that Emma used, a couch in the living room where Robert slept, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom with a shower that only worked half the time, but it was clean. The walls might be water-stained and the furniture secondhand, but Robert had scrubbed every surface until it shone. Emma's door opened. She stood there in her oversized t-shirt and pajama pants, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her brown eyes wide with concern and confusion. "Dad, what's going on? Who is that? Found him at the bus stop? Sweetheart, he's in trouble. I couldn't just leave him." Emma walked closer, studying the man on their couch. Even in his disheveled state, it was clear this wasn't a homeless person. His watch alone probably cost more than their annual rent. Is he drunk? Yeah, but there's something else going on. He kept saying people were after him, that it wasn't safe. Emma bit her lip, the way she always did when she was thinking hard about something. She was so much like her mother, smart, compassionate, but practical too. Should we call someone? The police? He begged me not to take him to a hospital, seemed terrified of being found. Robert pulled off the man's shoes, expensive loafers that probably cost $600. Let's just let him sleep it off. In the morning, he can tell us what's going on, and we'll figure it out from there. Emma nodded slowly. Okay, but Dad, be careful. We don't know anything about him. I know, baby. Go back to bed. You've got school in a few hours. After Emma returned to her room, Robert covered the man with an old blanket and sat in his rickety chair across from the couch. He should have been sleeping. He had to be at work in 6 hours, but something kept him awake. Maybe it was the way the man had grabbed his jacket with such desperation, maybe it was the fear in his eyes, or maybe it was just that Robert had learned the hard way what it felt like to be abandoned when you needed help most. 7 years ago, Sarah had been walking home from her shift at the diner when she'd collapsed on the sidewalk. She'd been having chest pains for weeks, but wouldn't see a doctor because they couldn't afford it. People walked past her. Some stopped to look, but nobody helped. By the time someone finally called 911, it was too late. The heart attack had been massive. She died alone on a cold sidewalk while strangers stepped around her like she was just another piece of urban debris. Robert had never forgiven himself for not recognizing the signs, for not forcing her to see a doctor. And he'd never forgiven those people who walked past his dying wife. He'd made a promise at her funeral, standing there with 8-year-old Emma crying beside him. He would never be one of those people, never. The man on his couch stirred, mumbling something incoherent. Robert got up and checked to make sure he was still breathing okay. Up close, he could see the guy was probably in his early 40s, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples and a strong jawline. There were dark circles under his eyes, and even in sleep, his face looked troubled. Robert went to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water from the tap. The faucet leaked. It always leaked, and he made a mental note to try fixing it again this weekend. He couldn't afford a plumber, so he'd taught himself basic repairs from YouTube videos. Some worked better than others. He thought about Emma, probably lying awake in her room, worried. She was such a good kid, never complained about their situation, never asked for things she knew they couldn't afford. She studied hard, got perfect grades, tutored other kids to earn extra money. She wanted to be a doctor, to help people the way nobody had helped her mother. Robert would do anything to make that dream come true. The man on the couch suddenly jerked awake, his eyes wild with panic. He sat up fast, looking around the unfamiliar room with clear alarm. Where am I? What is this place? Robert stepped out of the kitchen, hands raised peacefully. Easy, easy, you're safe. I'm Robert Martinez. You collapsed at the bus stop downtown. I brought you here so you could sleep it off. The man stared at him, confusion and suspicion warring on his face. Why would you do that? You don't know me. You needed help. That's reason enough. The man looked around the small apartment, taking in the worn furniture, the peeling paint, the obvious signs of poverty. This is your home. It's not much, but it's clean and safe. More than you had at that bus stop. The man put his head in his hands, and Robert saw his shoulders start to shake. Was he crying? No. Laughing? A bitter, broken kind of laugh. This is insane. Completely insane. He looked up at Robert. Do you have any idea who I am? Should I? I'm Jonathan Pierce, Pierce Industries. I'm worth $4 billion, and I'm sitting in ... He gestured around the apartment. Where am I? South Side, Chicago. About as far from your world as you can get, I'm guessing. Jonathan laughed again, that same hollow sound. You have no idea. No idea at all. You want to tell me why a billionaire was passed out? Drunk at a bus stop at 2 in the morning, talking about how people were after him? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Robert could see him weighing his options, deciding how much to trust a complete stranger. They're trying to remove me, Jonathan said finally. My own board of directors, led by my CFO Marcus Webb and my former business partner David Chen, they've been embezzling money from the company for years, millions of dollars. I found out 3 days ago. I have proof, documents, everything. I was going to go public tomorrow, expose them all, so they decided to stop you first. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration dinner, new contracts, big deals. But they drugged my drink. I realized it too late, felt myself getting fuzzy. I knew if I stayed there, I wouldn't make it out alive. They'd make it look like an accident or like I'd gotten drunk and done something reckless. He looked at Robert with haunted eyes. I ran, got in a cab, told the driver to just drive. Eventually got out somewhere downtown. I was trying to stay conscious long enough to figure out what to do next when you found me. Robert studied him carefully. The story was crazy, like something out of a movie. But the fear in Jonathan's eyes was real. The desperation was real. Why not go to the police? Because Marcus has connections there. He's paid off the right people, has them in his pocket. If I go to the police, I might not make it to a cell. And even if I do, my evidence could disappear. Jonathan leaned forward. I know how this sounds. I know you have no reason to believe me. But I'm telling you the truth. Emma's door opened again. She stood in the doorway, clearly having heard everything. Dad, is this for real? Jonathan looked at the teenage girl, then back at Robert. You have a daughter, and you brought a stranger into your home. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? Seemed like you were in more danger than you were to us, Robert said simply. Jonathan stared at him with something like wonder. You really don't know who I am, do you? You've never seen me on the news, never heard of Pierce Industries? I don't watch much news. Too depressing. And I work nights, sleep days when I can. Don't have much time for keeping up with billionaires. That's actually incredibly lucky. Jonathan ran his hands through his hair. If Marcus thinks I'm dead or incapacitated somewhere, he won't be looking for me here. Nobody would think to look for me in a place like this. No offense, none taken. It's not the Four Seasons, that's for sure. I need to get to my lawyer, Jonathan said, thinking out loud. Michael Ross, he's the only person I trust completely. But I can't use my phone. They'll track it. And if I just show up at his office, they'll be watching for you, Emma finished. She walked into the living room, her arms crossed. So you need to contact him without them knowing. Jonathan looked at the 15-year-old with newfound respect. Exactly, but how? Emma thought for a moment. Does your lawyer have kids, too? A boy and a girl? Why? What school do they go to? Lincoln Academy? It's a private school on the north side. Emma's eyes lit up. I know that school. We played them in debate last year. Their daughter is Sarah Ross, right? She's a junior. You know Sarah not well, but we talked after the debate. She was really nice, actually gave me some tips. Emma pulled out her phone. I have her Instagram. I could message her, say I need to talk to her dad about something urgent. Make it sound like it's about a scholarship opportunity or something. She gives me his personal number, and you call him from a phone he won't expect. Jonathan and Robert both stared at her. That's single quotes double quotes, Jonathan started. Brilliant, Robert finished, pride evident in his voice. My daughter's going to be a doctor, but she should probably be a spy. Emma blushed. It's just logical thinking. It's more than that, Jonathan said seriously. It's the kind of quick thinking that could save my life, and possibly my company. He paused. But I don't want to put you in danger, either of you. If Marcus finds out I'm here, then we'll deal with it, Robert said firmly. Besides, seems to me like you need all the help you can get, and we're not exactly on anyone's radar. Why are you doing this? Jonathan asked quietly. You don't know me. This isn't your problem. Robert was quiet for a moment. Remembering Sarah lying on that cold sidewalk? Remembering the feeling of helplessness when the doctors told him she hadn't made it? Remembering the anger at all those people who walked past? My wife died 7 years ago. Heart attack on the street, people just walked by her. Nobody stopped to help until it was too late. His voice was steady, but his hands clenched into fists. I swore I'd never be one of those people. Never just walk past someone who needs help. Jonathan's eyes filled with Unexpected tears. I'm sorry about your wife. Me too, every day. Robert looked at Emma, then back at Jonathan. But I've got my daughter, and I've got my word. That's enough to get by on. The three of them sat in silence for a moment. An unlikely alliance formed in a shabby apartment on the south side of Chicago, a billionaire CEO on the run, a single-father warehouse worker, and a 15-year-old girl who might just be smart enough to save them all. All right, Jonathan said finally. Let's do this. Emma, can you message Sarah now? Emma nodded and pulled up Instagram on her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen as she composed the message. Robert watched his daughter work, feeling that familiar mix of pride and fear. She was so capable, so smart, but she was still just a kid, and he was dragging her into something that could be dangerous. Sent, Emma said. Now we wait. How long do you think Jonathan started? But Emma's phone buzzed. She responded. Emma's eyes widened. She says, her dad is actually up working late on a case, and she can get his number for me right now. That's convenient, Robert said suspiciously. Or fate, Jonathan murmured. I'll take it either way. A moment later, Emma had the number. She handed her phone to Jonathan. You should probably call from the bathroom. Quieter, and if they somehow trace it better if they don't hear our voices. Smart kid, Jonathan thought as he walked into the small bathroom and closed the door. He dialed the number with shaking hands. It rang 3 times before a tired voice answered. Michael Ross speaking. Michael, it's Jonathan. Don't say my name out loud. Are you alone? There was a pause. What, Jonathan? Where are you? Marcus called me hours ago, said you'd left the dinner acting strange, that they were worried about you. He wanted to know if I'd heard from you. I bet he did, Michael. They drugged me. Marcus and David, they're trying to take me out so I can't expose what they've been doing. Expose? What? Jonathan, what are you talking about? The embezzlement? I found all the evidence. Emails, transactions, everything. They've been stealing from Pierce Industries for years. I was going to bring it to you tomorrow, but they moved first. He could hear Michael breathing hard on the other end. Are you serious? Do you have proof? I have copies of everything in my safe deposit box at First National. Box 237, the key is ... double quotes. Jonathan patted his pockets and felt a wave of relief. Still in my jacket pocket? I need you to get those documents, Michael. Without them, I'm just making accusations. With them, we can bury Marcus and David. Where are you? I can come get you right now. No, if they're watching Yuan, they probably are. That'll lead them straight to me. I need you to get the documents first thing tomorrow morning when the bank opens. Then we go to the federal prosecutors, not the local police. Marcus has people in the Chicago PD. This is insane. Jonathan, I know, but it's also true. Can you do this? Do you still trust me? Another pause. Of course I trust you. You saved my career when everyone else was ready to write me off. I'll get those documents. But Jonathan, where are you staying? Are you safe? Jonathan looked around the cramped bathroom with its chipped tiles and leaking faucet. Safer than you'd believe. I'm with people who are helping me. Good people. I'll call you on this number when I have the documents. Stay safe. Jonathan, you too, Michael, and thank you. Jonathan hung up and stood there for a moment, trying to process everything. 24 hours ago, he'd been in his penthouse apartment, drinking 15-year-old scotch and reviewing quarterly reports. Now, he was hiding in a stranger's bathroom, dependent on the kindness of people he didn't know, running for his life from men he'd trusted. When he came out, Robert and Emma were sitting at the small kitchen table. Emma had made coffee terrible. Coffee, but hot and caffeinated, so Robert asked. He's going to get the documents first thing tomorrow. Then we take everything to the federal prosecutors, so we just wait until tomorrow, Emma asked. We wait, Jonathan confirmed. He looked at the clock on the wall. It's almost 4 in the morning. You should both get some sleep, especially you, he nodded at Emma. Don't you have school? I'm not going to be able to sleep, Emma admitted. This is like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
Well, movies usually end better than real life, Robert said grimly. He looked at Jonathan. You can have the couch. I'll take the chair. I can't take your bed. It's not my bed. I sleep on the couch normally. Emma has the bedroom. Jonathan looked around the tiny apartment again, truly seeing it this time. 1 bedroom? Robert gave his daughter the only bedroom and slept on the couch. This man who had nothing was giving everything to his daughter, and now to a stranger. Why don't you have a bedroom? Jonathan asked before he could stop himself. Robert's jaw tightened. Can't afford a 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood? Rather have Emma somewhere decent with her own space than both of us in a cheaper place that's not safe. She's got enough to deal with without worrying about break-ins or worse. Jonathan felt something crack inside his chest. This man made in a month what Jonathan spent on wine in a week. And yet he had more dignity, more purpose, more real wealth than Jonathan had ever known. Get some rest, Robert said. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Robert's apartment, casting pale light across the worn furniture. Jonathan hadn't slept. He'd laid on the couch staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to the sounds of the building coming alive around him. Toilets flushing, babies crying, couples arguing in Spanish 2 floors up. It was a symphony of life he'd forgotten existed. Insulated as he'd been in his luxury penthouse, where the only sounds were the hum of climate control and the occasional ping of his phone. Robert emerged from the bathroom at 5:30, already dressed in his warehouse uniform, navy blue pants, and a matching shirt with his name embroidered on the chest. He moved quietly, trying not to wake anyone, but Jonathan was already sitting up. "You look terrible," Robert observed, heading to the kitchen to start coffee. "Thanks. You really know how to make a guy?" "Feel welcome. Just being honest. When's the last time you actually slept?" Jonathan had to think about it. Really slept? Maybe 3 days ago, before I found the files? Robert poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Jonathan. It was instant coffee, the cheap kind, but Jonathan took it gratefully. "You called your lawyer from the bathroom last night, but I've been thinking," Robert said, sitting in his chair. "These guys who are after you, they're smart, right? Rich, connected, very. So they'll be thinking ahead. They'll know you need to get evidence, need to contact people. They'll be watching your usual spots, your office, your lawyer's office, your home, your clubs, your friends' places. That's why I can't go to any of those places, right? But here's what worries me. When does your lawyer get those documents from the bank? When it opens? 9 o'clock? And he's just going to walk in there. A known associate of yours, going to your safe deposit box the morning after you disappeared." Robert shook his head. "They'll be watching the bank, too. They have to be." Jonathan felt his stomach drop. "You're right. Of course you're right. If Marcus is smart enough to plan everything else, he's smart enough to have someone at that bank." He put his head in his hands. "What do I do? I need those documents." "You need someone they wouldn't expect to get them." "Who?" "Michael is the only person I trust, and you're right, they'll be watching him." Robert was quiet for a moment, thinking. What about someone they'd never connect to you? Someone so far outside your world, they wouldn't even think to look. Jonathan looked up slowly. "You? Me? I don't know you. Nobody knows I know you. I'm just some random guy going to a bank. Even if they're watching, they're looking for your people, not someone like me." "Robert, I can't ask you to do that. If they figure out who you are, they won't. I'll be in and out before anyone notices. I've got the day off anyway. Since I worked last weekend. You'd do that for me? Risk yourself for a stranger." Robert took a sip of his terrible coffee. "My daughter's in there sleeping, dreaming about becoming a doctor. You know how much medical school costs? I've been saving for 10 years, and I've got maybe enough to cover her first semester. Maybe she's brilliant enough to get scholarships, but those don't cover everything. Books, housing, all the little things that add up." He looked at Jonathan directly. "I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it because it's right. But if helping you somehow helps me give my daughter a better future, I won't apologize for that." Jonathan felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Respect, real, genuine respect for another person. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle. Robert wanted something too, but he was honest about it. No games, no manipulation. Just a father trying to give his child a chance. "If I get through this," Jonathan said quietly, "when I get through this, your daughter's education is covered. All of it. Medical school, books, housing, everything. That's a promise. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's payment for services rendered. You're saving my life, Robert. That's worth more than a medical school education, but it's a start." Robert studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but Emma doesn't know about this part. She'd refuse. Tell me not to take anything. She's proud like her mother was." "Understood. So, how do we do this?" They spent the next hour planning. Robert would need identification to access the box, and Jonathan's driver's license photo would be checked. But Jonathan remembered something, a provision he'd added years ago when he was paranoid about something happening to him. Michael Ross was listed as an alternate on the box, but so was someone else. His assistant, Patricia Chen, David's sister. Wait, Robert said. His sister has access to your safe deposit box. Had access. I removed her 3 months ago after she and David had a falling out. But the bank might not have processed the paperwork yet. You know how banks are with their bureaucracy. So, even if they're watching for Michael Ross, they might not be watching for Patricia Chen. Exactly. And Patricia left the company 2 months ago, moved to Seattle. They probably don't even know where she is. Robert nodded slowly. We need to call her. She needs to give permission for someone else to access the box on her behalf. That's a legal gray area at best. Your situation is a legal gray area. We're past worrying about technicalities. Jonathan pulled out Emma's phone, which she'd lent him. I need to make another call. Patricia Chen answered on the second ring. Hello, Patricia, it's Jonathan Pierce. Don't say my name out loud. Are you alone? He heard her sharp intake of breath. What's going on? David called me yesterday, said you'd gone missing. He sounded worried, but there was something off about it. Something that didn't feel right. Your instincts were correct. Patricia, your brother and Marcus Webb are trying to remove me from the company. They've been embezzling millions. I have proof in my safe deposit box at First National, but I can't get to it myself. I need your help. There was a long pause. My brother is stealing from you, from the company, from everyone. I'm sorry, Patricia. I know this is hard to hear. It's not hard to hear. It's exactly what I'd expect from David. Her voice was bitter. Why do you think we had a falling out? I found out he was cooking the books on one of our subsidiaries. When I confronted him, he threatened me. Said I'd regret it if I told anyone. I left the company rather than work with him anymore. Why didn't you come to me? Because I thought you knew. I thought you were all in on it together. And I was the fool for thinking corporate America could be anything other than corrupt. She laughed harshly. Guess I was wrong about you at least. I need you to authorize someone to access the box on your behalf. His name is Robert Martinez. He's helping me. Who is Robert Martinez? Should I know him? No, he's nobody famous, nobody connected. That's why he's perfect for this. They won't see him coming. Patricia was quiet again, thinking, if I do this, if I help you take down David and Marcus, I want something in return. Name it when this is over. When you've cleaned house, I want my job back. And I want to be CFO. I want to fix what David broke. Jonathan smiled for the first time in days. Deal. You'd be perfect for it anyway. You were always better at the numbers than your brother. Text me this Robert Martinez's information. I'll call the bank and authorize him. But, Jonathan, be careful. David might be my brother, but he's dangerous. He doesn't lose gracefully. After he hung up, Jonathan looked at Robert. Cease calling the bank now. You can go in an hour. Emma emerged from her bedroom, already dressed in her school uniform, a white shirt and navy skirt that had been hemmed and re-hemmed as she grew. She looked from her father to Jonathan, reading the tension in the room. What's happening? Your dad's going to help me get some documents, Jonathan said. Documents that prove what you told us last night? About the embezzlement? Smart kid, Jonathan said to Robert. Gets it from her mother. Robert stood up. Emma, you need to go to school like normal. Nothing different, nothing unusual. But, Dad, I need you to act like everything's fine. If anyone asks about me being home, I'm sick. Simple as that. Emma looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. She was mature enough to understand when her father's tone meant the discussion was over. She grabbed her backpack, worn but clean, covered in patches she'd sewn on herself, and headed for the door. But she stopped and turned back. Dad, be careful. Always am, sweetheart. After Emma left, Robert changed out of his work uniform into his only decent clothes, khaki pants, and a button-down shirt he wore to church on the rare Sundays he wasn't working. He looked at himself in the mirror, trying to see what a bank teller would see. A middle-aged man in cheap but clean clothes. Nobody threatening, nobody memorable. You look fine, Jonathan said from the doorway. I look like what I am, a working-class guy who's out of his depth. That's exactly what we want. You're not supposed to look like you belong in my world. Jonathan handed him a piece of paper. Here's everything you need to know. Box number, Patricia's full name, my account number. The documents are in a large manila envelope. Don't open it, don't look inside. Just get it and bring it straight back here. What if something goes wrong? Then you walk away. You don't know me. You were doing a favor for Patricia Chen, who you met online or something. You make up whatever story you need to, but you protect yourself. and Emma first, understand. Robert nodded, pocketing the information. What about you? You're just going to sit here? I'm going to make some calls. Quietly, there are a few people I need to contact. People who can help once we have the evidence. Federal prosecutors, right? Not local police, right? Marcus has too many connections in the CPD, but the FBI, they're different. Harder to corrupt. More interested in cases that make headlines. Jonathan managed a grim smile. Taking down a Fortune 500 CEO and CFO for massive fraud? That's the kind of case that makes careers. Robert left the apartment at 8:30, giving himself plenty of time to get downtown. He took the bus, the same route he took every day to work, but this time, he got off in the financial district. The buildings here were tall and gleaming, so different from his neighborhood. People in expensive suits rushed past, talking on phones, carrying leather briefcases. Robert felt like an intruder in their world. First National Bank was an imposing building with marble columns and brass fixtures. Robert pushed through the revolving door and felt the blast of air conditioning. Everything here was clean and cold and impersonal. He approached the desk where a young woman sat with perfect makeup and a practiced smile. "Good morning, how can I help you? I need to access a safe deposit box." Patricia Chen authorized me. He handed over his ID and the information Jonathan had given him. The woman typed something into her computer, her smile never wavering. "One moment, please." She picked up a phone and spoke quietly to someone. Robert tried not to look nervous, tried to appear like this was something he did every day. A manager appeared, a balding man in his 50s with a suspicious look. "Mr. Martinez, I'm David Paulson. I see here that Patricia Chen has authorized you to access box 237.
That's right.
May I ask your relationship to Ms. Chen?" Robert had prepared for this. "She's a friend of my daughter's family. My daughter goes to Lincoln Academy, knows Sarah Ross. There's a scholarship opportunity and some documents needed." Patricia said she'd stored some things in her box that would help. The manager's expression softened slightly. Lincoln Academy was prestigious enough to be credible. "I see. Well, everything seems to be in order, if you'll follow me." Robert's heart was pounding as he followed the manager down to the vault. He kept expecting someone to stop him, to call, but out that this was a fraud, to see through the whole thing. But they just walked down a corridor lined with metal boxes, the manager checking numbers until he found 237. "I'll need to verify the key," the manager said. Robert handed over the key Jonathan had given him. The manager inspected it, then used it along with a bank key to open the box. He pulled out a large metal drawer. "You can use room 3 for privacy. Take your time. Just press the button when you're finished and someone will come." To secure the box again, Robert carried the drawer into the small room and closed the door. Inside was exactly what Jonathan had described, a large manila envelope. It was thick, bulging with papers. Robert didn't open it. He simply tucked it under his arm, pressed the button, and waited for the manager to return. 5 minutes later, he was walking out of the bank, the envelope secured in his jacket. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. He was halfway to the bus stop when he noticed them too. Men in dark suits, standing by a black car, watching the bank entrance. They hadn't been there when he went in. One of them was speaking into a phone, his eyes scanning everyone who came out. Robert kept walking, forcing himself to maintain a normal pace. "Don't run. Don't look suspicious. You're just a guy who went to the bank. Nothing unusual. Nothing to see here." He turned the corner and allowed himself to breathe. Then he walked faster, not quite running, but close. He needed to get back to the apartment. Needed to get these documents to Jonathan before, "Excuse me, sir." Robert froze. One of the men from the car had followed him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "Can I help you?" Robert tried to keep his voice steady. "I think maybe you can. See, my employer is looking for something. Some documents that went missing. And I noticed you just came from First National Bank, and you look a little nervous. I don't know what you're talking about." "No, then you won't mind if I take a look at what's in your jacket." Robert's mind raced. He was in the middle of downtown Chicago, people walking past them on the sidewalk. This guy couldn't just attack him in broad daylight, could he? "I do mind, actually, and if you don't leave me alone, I'm calling the police." The man's smile widened. "Go ahead, call them. Let's see who they believe, a respected businessman like myself, or someone like you. Someone like you." The casual dismissal, the assumption that Robert's word would be worthless because of his cheap clothes and working-class accent, It was the same attitude Robert had faced his whole life, the same attitude that had let Sarah die on a sidewalk because people like her weren't worth stopping for. Something hardened in Robert's chest. "You don't want to do this," he said quietly. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. Whatever you think you're going to do, whatever you think you can get away with, there are people watching. People who will care if something happens to me." It was a bluff. Nobody was watching. Nobody knew where he was except Jonathan. But he said it with such conviction that the man hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, Robert saw his chance. A bus was pulling up to the stop 20 feet away. He bolted for it, running faster than he had in years. His back screamed in protest, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He heard the man shouting behind him, heard footsteps pounding. After him, the bus doors started to close. Robert lunged forward, jamming his hand between them. They opened again, and he practically fell inside. "Sir, you need to pay," the driver started. "Go, drive." Robert shoved money into the fare box, not even counting it, just needing the bus to move. Now, the driver, startled by his urgency, hit the gas. The bus lurched forward. Through the window, Robert saw the man standing on the sidewalk, phone to his ear, watching the bus pull away. Robert collapsed into a seat, his heart hammering. The envelope was still tucked inside his jacket. He'd made it, barely, but he'd made it. But now they knew someone had accessed the box. They knew someone had the documents, and they'd seen his face. 20 minutes later, Robert burst into his apartment. Jonathan jumped up from the couch, where he'd been pacing. "Did you get it?" "I got it." Robert pulled out the envelope with shaking hands. "But they saw me. There were men watching the bank. One of them followed me, tried to stop me." Jonathan's face went pale. "Did he see where you went? Did he follow you here?" "I lost him on the bus." "But Jonathan, they know someone has the documents now. They'll be looking harder." Jonathan took the envelope and opened it, spreading the contents across the coffee table. Bank statements, emails, transfer records, internal memos, years of evidence, all carefully documented. "This is it," Jonathan breathed. "This is everything we need. Marcus and David are finished. What do we do now?" Jonathan was already pulling out Emma's phone. "Now I call my contacts at the FBI. We hand this over to them before Marcus can figure out where I am." But before he could dial, there was a loud knock at the door. Not a friendly knock, a heavy authoritative pounding that made them both freeze. "Robert Martinez, this is the Chicago Police Department." "Open the door." Robert and Jonathan looked at each other in horror. The police, Marcus's people in the police force, they'd found them somehow already. The pounding came again, harder. "Mr. Martinez, we know you're in there. Open this door, or we're coming in." Robert looked at Jonathan, at the documents spread across the table, at everything they'd risked to get this far. They were so close to exposing the truth, to bringing down the people who'd tried to destroy Jonathan's life. But now, the police were at the door, and they had maybe 30 seconds before those doors came crashing in. "The fire escape," Robert whispered. "Out the window, down the fire escape. What about you? They're looking for me, not you. You take the documents and run. Get to the FBI, I'll deal with the police. Robert, they'll arrest you. Charge you with something, anything to keep you locked up, while Marcus figures out his next move. Then you'd better work fast." Robert grabbed the envelope and shoved it into Jonathan's hands. "Emma's school, Lincoln Academy. If something happens to me, if I don't come back, you make sure she's okay. Promise me." The pounding was getting louder. They could hear the super's voice now, fumbling with keys. "I promise," Jonathan said. "Then go now." Jonathan ran for the window, climbing out onto the rusted fire escape as Robert walked toward the door. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart, trying to prepare himself for what came next. He opened the door just as the police were about to break it down. "Officers," he said calmly, "can I help you?" 3 police officers stood in the doorway, their expressions hard and suspicious. The lead officer, a heavy-set man with gray hair and a badge that read Sergeant Morrison, pushed past Robert into the apartment. "Robert Martinez, we have questions about your activities this morning." "What activities?" Robert kept his voice steady, his hands visible. He knew how this worked. "Stay calm, don't give them a reason. You were seen leaving First National Bank with documents that don't belong to you. That's theft, Mr. Martinez." "I had authorization. Patricia Chen gave me permission to access her safe deposit box." Morrison smirked. "Funny thing about that, we contacted Ms. Chen in Seattle. She says she never authorized anyone named Robert Martinez to access anything. Robert's stomach dropped. They'd gotten to her, threatened her, or paid her off, or convinced her somehow to deny everything. Without her corroboration, he had no legal standing. It would be his word against a billionaire's. CFO, I want to call a lawyer, Robert said. You can call one from the station. Morrison nodded to the other officers. Search the place. Find those documents. They tore through his small apartment like a hurricane, dumped drawers, overturned furniture, ripped through Emma's room. Robert stood there watching them destroy the home he'd worked so hard to maintain, feeling helpless and angry, but he didn't resist. Resisting would only make things worse. After 20 minutes, Morrison's radio crackled, a voice on the other end, quiet but clear. The target exited via fire escape, lost visual heading south on Racine. Morrison's face darkened. He turned to Robert. Where is he? Where's who? Don't play stupid. Jonathan Pierce. We know he was here. I don't know what you're talking about. Morrison stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Listen to me very carefully. You're in way over your head. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Marcus Webb can make your life a living hell. He can make sure you never work again, make sure your daughter loses her scholarship, make sure you both end up on the street. Or you can tell me where Pierce went, and this all goes away. You go back to your life like nothing happened. Robert met his eyes steadily. I want my lawyer. Morrison's jaw clenched. Fine, have it your way. He nodded to the other officers. Arrest him. Theft, obstruction of justice, harboring a fugitive. We'll make it all stick. As they cuffed him and read him his rights, Robert thought about Emma. She'd be getting out of school in a few hours. She'd come home to find the apartment destroyed and her father gone. He needed to get word to her somehow, let her know he was okay. Can I make a phone call? To my daughter's school? She's 15. She needs to know. You can call from the station, Morrison said coldly. They led him down the 4 flights of stairs, past neighbors who watched from cracked doors with expressions of sympathy and fear. This was the South Side. Everyone knew what it looked like when the police took someone away. Everyone knew how rarely those people came back. Meanwhile, Jonathan was running through alleys and side streets, the manila envelope clutched against his chest. His expensive shoes weren't made for running, and his lungs burned from years of sedentary luxury living. But fear kept him moving. He needed to get to the FBI, but he couldn't just walk into their downtown office. Marcus would have people watching. He needed another approach, a back channel that nobody would expect. Emma, she was the key. She was still at school, still safe, still unknown to Marcus's people. And she was smart enough to help him figure out the next move. Jonathan found himself outside Lincoln Academy at 2:30, just as students were being dismissed. The school was impressive. Brick buildings, manicured lawns, the kind of place where futures were built. Emma didn't belong here by birth or money. She belonged here by sheer brilliance and determination. He waited across the street, trying to look inconspicuous. Finally, he saw her walking out with a group of other students, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder. She was laughing at something another girl said, looking young and carefree. Jonathan hated that he was about to destroy that moment. He called out to her, Emma. She turned, her smile fading when she saw him. She said something to her friends and jogged across the street. Mr. Pierce, what are you doing here? Where's my dad? We need to talk. Somewhere private. They walked to a small park 2 blocks away. When they were alone on a bench away from the playground, Jonathan told her everything. The bank, the chase, the police at the apartment. Emma's face went pale. They arrested him. For what? Theft? Obstruction? They'll charge him with whatever they can make stick. Emma, I'm so sorry. Your father did this to help me. And now, where are the documents? Jonathan blinked. He'd expected tears, panic, anger. Instead, she was focused on the mission, just like her father. I have them, but I can't get to the FBI office downtown. They'll be watching. Emma thought for a moment, her mind racing. Sarah Ross, remember? The lawyer's daughter? She goes here. What about her? If your lawyer can't go to the FBI without being followed, and you can't go, then someone else has to. Someone they'd never suspect. Emma pulled out her phone. Sarah's a senior. She's got a car. She can drive to the FBI office, hand over the documents, tell them where you are. They won't believe a teenager. They will when they see what's in that envelope. And she can tell them her father sent her, that he couldn't come himself because he's being watched. They'll take it seriously. Jonathan stared at this 15-year-old girl who thought like a chess master. Your father was right about you. You should be a spy. I'm going to be a doctor. But first, we're going to save my dad. She was already texting. Sarah owes me anyway. I helped her pass chemistry last year. 10 minutes later, Sarah Ross met them at the park. She was a tall blonde with her father's sharp eyes and her mother's composure. When Emma explained the situation, Sarah didn't hesitate. My dad's been trying to take down corrupt executives for years. He'll be thrilled to be part of this. She took the envelope. FBI field office is on Roosevelt Road, right? Right? Ask for Special Agent Jennifer Martinez. She's been investigating corporate fraud for years, and she's clean. I checked. Jonathan wrote down the agent's direct number. Tell her Jonathan Pierce sent you. Tell her it's about Pierce Industries and Marcus Webb. That'll get her attention. Sarah nodded and ran for the student parking lot. Emma and Jonathan watched her drive away. Now what? Emma asked. Now we wait, and we figure out how to get your father out of police custody before Marcus decides he's a liability that needs to be eliminated. You think they'd hurt him? Actually hurt him? Jonathan looked at this young girl who still wanted to believe the world was fundamentally good. Emma, they tried to eliminate me. Your father is a witness who can testify about everything. Yes, I think they'd hurt him. Emma's jaw set in a way that reminded Jonathan of Robert. Sid, then we need to move fast. At the police station, Robert sat in an interrogation room. He'd been there for 3 hours. They hadn't let him call Emma's school. They hadn't let him call a lawyer. They just kept asking the same questions over and over. Where is Jonathan Pierce? What did you take from the bank? Who else is involved? Robert gave the same answer every time. I want a lawyer. Finally, the door opened. But it wasn't Morrison. It was a man Robert had never seen before. Short, balding with cold eyes, and an expensive suit. Marcus Webb. He didn't introduce himself, but Robert knew. Mr. Martinez, I'm disappointed we had to meet this way. I have nothing to say to you. Marcus sat down across from him, folding his hands on the table. I think you do. See, you've made things very complicated. You've taken something that belongs to me, and you've helped a very unstable man continue his delusions. Jonathan Pierce isn't unstable. He's trying to expose your crimes. Crimes? Marcus laughed. I'm a CFO of a Fortune 500 company. Everything I do is documented, legal, approved by boards and regulators. Pierce is the one who's been acting erratically, leaving important dinners, disappearing for days, making wild accusations. The board is very concerned about his mental state. Is that the story you're going with? That he's crazy? It's not a story, it's the truth. And you, Mr. Martinez, you're a poor father who got manipulated by a disturbed billionaire. You probably thought you'd get some money out of this, maybe a reward? I understand. You're struggling. Your daughter has expensive dreams. It makes sense that you'd make poor choices. Robert leaned forward. I made the choice to help someone who needed it. That's not a poor choice. That's called being human. Being human doesn't pay your daughter's tuition, but I can. Marcus pulled out a checkbook. $100,000 right now. All you have to do is tell me where Pierce went and what he did with those documents. You sign a statement saying he coerced you, threatened you, you're a victim in all this, and you walk out of here a rich man. Robert looked at the checkbook, then back at Marcus. You think everyone has a price? Everyone does. The question is just how much. Then you don't know people as well as you think you do. Robert stood up. I'm done talking. Either charge me with something or let me go. Marcus's friendly expression evaporated. You're making a serious mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Marcus stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. Your daughter, Emma. Lovely girl. Smart. I'd hate to see anything happen to her. Robert was across the room before Marcus could react, grabbing him by his expensive tie. You stay away from my daughter. You go anywhere near her. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how many police you own. I will end you. The door burst open. Officers rushed in, pulling Robert off Marcus's. They slammed him against the wall, cuffed his hands behind his back. Marcus straightened his tie, his face red, but his eyes cold with triumph. At assault. To the charges, and make sure he doesn't get bail. As they dragged Robert away, he didn't regret it. He'd made his position clear. Whatever happened to him, they knew he wouldn't break. And they knew threatening Emma would only make him more dangerous. At the FBI field office, Special Agent Jennifer Martinez sat across from Sarah Ross, reading through the documents spread across her desk. Her expression grew darker with each page. Where did you get these? Jonathan Pierce. He's the CEO of Pierce Industries. He discovered the embezzlement and his CFO tried to have him eliminated. He's in hiding now. And he gave these to you. A high school student? He gave them to Emma Jovanovi. Her father is the one who saved Mr. Pierce. But her father was arrested this afternoon by Chicago PD. We think corrupt officers working for Marcus Webb. Jennifer looked at the young woman across from her with new respect. You're very brave coming here. I'm not brave. I just know right from wrong. My dad's a lawyer. He taught me that. Jennifer picked up her phone. Get me Assistant Director Reeves. Now she looked back at Sarah. You said Jonathan Pierce is in hiding? We need to bring him in. Protective custody? He's with Emma Jovanovi. I can call them. 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up to the park, where Jonathan and Emma had been waiting. But these weren't Marcus's men. These were real federal agents, and they looked like they meant business. Special Agent Martinez stepped out. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an air of competence. Jonathan Pierce? That's me. I'm Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, FBI. We need you to come with us. Both of you? She looked at Emma. You're Emma Jovanovi? Yes, ma'am. Is my father okay? We're working on that right now. But first, we need Mr. Pierce's testimony on record. Then we're going to execute warrants for Marcus Webb, David Chen, and several officers in the Chicago PD. Take, Emma asked urgently. If everything goes smoothly, a few hours. We've got judges on standby. Jennifer opened the SUV door. Come on, we've got a lot of work to do. At FBI headquarters, Jonathan spent the next 3 hours giving a detailed statement. He walked them through everything. The embezzlement scheme, the attempted elimination, the corrupt officers, all of it. The documents Robert had risked everything to retrieve backed up every claim. Emma sat in a waiting room, her leg bouncing nervously. Every few minutes, she checked her phone, hoping for news about her father. Nothing. Finally, Jennifer came out. Emma, we're executing the warrants now. Marcus Webb is being arrested as we speak. David Chen too. And we're sending agents to the police station to secure your father's release. He's really okay. He will be. He's being held on bogus charges that won't stick now that we have the real evidence. He should be released within the hour. Emma felt tears of relief streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank your father. He's the real hero here. What he did was incredibly brave. Jennifer sat down next to her. You know, my daughter is about your age. If I was in trouble, I'd hope someone like your father would help me. The world needs more people like Robert Martinez. Across town, Marcus Webb was in his luxury office when federal agents burst through the door. He looked up from his desk, his confident smile freezing on his face. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. The lead agent pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to remain, ... Marcus tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. They cuffed him and led him out past his shocked employees, past the assistants and junior executives who'd thought he was untouchable. At the same moment, David Chen was being arrested at his home. He tried to make a call, probably to one of his contacts, but the agents took his phone before he could complete it. And at the police station, Sergeant Morrison watched in disbelief as federal agents came through the door with a warrant for his arrest and orders to release Robert Martinez immediately. This is a mistake, Morrison said. I was following orders from a criminal. The federal agent cut him off. That's not a defense. Let's go. Robert walked out of the interrogation room to find FBI agents waiting for him. Mr. Martinez, you're free to go. All charges are being dropped, and we owe you an apology for what you've been through. My daughter is safe. She's at our office with Jonathan Pierce. We'll take you there now. The reunion at FBI headquarters was emotional. Emma threw her arms around her father, sobbing with relief. Robert held her tight, his own eyes wet. I'm okay, baby. I'm okay. They said you assaulted someone. I might have grabbed Marcus Webb by the tie when he threatened you. Robert managed a weak smile. Worth it. Jonathan stood off to the side, watching the embrace. When Robert finally looked over at him, Jonathan said simply, "Thank you for everything. You saved my life. You would have done the same." No, Jonathan said honestly, a week ago, I wouldn't have. I would have looked the other way, called the police, let someone else handle it. I'd forgotten what it means to actually help another person. He paused. You taught me that. Special Agent Martinez approached Mr. Martinez. We're going to need your testimony as well, but it can wait until tomorrow. You've been through enough today. Go home, rest. We'll be in touch. What about our apartment? Emma asked. The police destroyed it. We'll make sure you're compensated for the damage. It's the least we can do. As they were leaving, Jonathan stopped them. Robert, Emma, wait. I meant what I said this morning. About Emma's education, medical school, everything. That's happening. Jonathan, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You saved my life, and you refused Marcus's bribe when taking it would have been easy. You have principles, real principles, the kind I'd lost somewhere along the way. Let me do this, please. Robert looked at Emma, saw the hope and amazement in her eyes, and nodded. Okay, but on one condition. Name it. When you rebuild your company, when you clean house and start fresh, you remember this. You remember what it's like to need help. And you help others the way we helped you. People who are struggling, who need a break, who just need someone to believe in them. Jonathan felt something shift inside him, something fundamental and permanent. I promise. In fact, I'm going to create a foundation, the Sarah Martinez Memorial Foundation, named after your wife. It'll provide scholarships and support for people who are trying to build better lives. And you're going to help me run it? I'm a warehouse worker. You're a man who understands what really matters. That's more valuable than any business degree. Jonathan held out his hand. Deal. Robert shook it. Deal. 3 months later, Robert stood in a newly renovated office downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and functional. The sign on the door read, Sarah Martinez Memorial Foundation. Robert Martinez, Director of Community Outreach. Emma was at school, thriving now that the stress of financial worry had been lifted. She'd been accepted to every medical school she applied to, with full scholarships funded by the foundation, but she'd decided to stay in Chicago for college, close to her father. Jonathan Pierce had stepped down as CEO of Pierce Industries after cleaning house. He'd sold most of his shares, keeping just enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly. He spent his days working with the foundation, meeting with people who needed help, learning to see them as individuals rather than statistics. Marcus Webb and David Chen were awaiting trial, facing decades in prison. Patricia Chen had indeed taken over as CFO and was working to restore the company's reputation. Sergeant Morrison and 3 other corrupt officers had been arrested, and the Chicago PD had launched an internal investigation. Robert's phone rang. It was a mother from the South Side, calling about her son who wanted to be an engineer but couldn't afford college. Tell me about him, Robert said, settling into his chair. What's his story? As he listened, he thought about Sarah. She'd died alone on a cold sidewalk. But her death hadn't been meaningless. It had taught him to stop for others, to help when help was needed. And now, through the foundation, her legacy was helping hundreds of people build better lives. He thought about that rainy night at the bus stop, the moment he'd decided to help a drunk stranger instead of walking away. It had seemed like such a small choice at the time, but small choices had a way of creating big ripples. That evening, Robert and Emma had dinner with Jonathan at a small Italian restaurant in their neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but the food was good, and the owner knew them by name. They talked about the foundation's new initiatives, about Emma's classes, about Jonathan's upcoming testimony at Marcus's trial. Can I ask you something? Jonathan said to Robert as they were finishing dessert. That night at the bus stop, when you saw me lying there, what made you stop? What made you decide to help? Robert was quiet for a moment, remembering, I saw someone who needed help, that's all. The rest didn't matter who you were, how much money you had, whether helping you would benefit me. You needed help, so I helped. That's what people should do. But most people don't. Most people are scared. Scared of getting involved. Scared of being taken advantage of. Scared of stepping outside their comfortable lives. Robert shrugged. I understand that fear. But I've learned that the things we regret most aren't the risks we took. They're the times we walked away when we should have stopped. Jonathan raised his glass. 2. Not walking away. Robert and Emma clinked their glasses against his. 2. Not walking away. Outside the restaurant window, Chicago went about its business. Millions of people living their lives, making their choices, deciding every day whether to stop or keep walking when they saw someone who needed help. And in one small neighborhood on the South Side, in one modest apartment that had been cleaned and repaired, a framed photo sat on a shelf. It showed a smiling woman, Sarah Martinez, holding a baby Emma. Next to it was a newer photo, Robert, Emma, and Jonathan at the foundation's opening day, arms around each other, looking like family, because that's what they'd become. Not through blood or wealth or obligation, but through the simple act of choosing to help when help was needed, through refusing to walk away, and every day, through the foundation that bore Sarah's name, they helped others make the same choice. They funded scholarships and job training. They paid medical bills and prevented evictions. They gave people chances who'd never had chances before. They proved that one person's decision to stop, to help, to care, could change everything. Robert went to work each day knowing his job mattered. Emma studied knowing her dreams were possible. And Jonathan lived knowing he'd been given a second chance to become the person he should have been all along. All because one poor father brought a drunk billionaire into his house on a rainy night and chose kindness over fear. The world needed more nights like that. More people like Robert Martinez. More moments when someone decided that helping another person mattered more than playing it safe. And, slowly, one small choice at a time, they were working to make that world real.